And Ralph asked me to do a talk on William Augustus Nicholas, and so I put together a bunch of about 45 slides here. It's based around a book that my late bloke Maureen and I wrote in 2015 on William Augustus Nicholas, Sarah, and his brother George Henry Nicholas, and Clara Louise Nicholas, and they were all photographers. And we wrote a book, which actually I read it last night. It's not, when you read a book 5 years later, 7 years later, it's a good test and it's not a bad book. Okay, we'll begin at the local graveyard, which is just down there. And this is the grave of William Augustus and Sarah Nicholas, also Amy and Liza. She was the eldest daughter of William Augustus and Sarah Nicholas. She died in 1880, aged 11 years, which means she was born back in 1869. She was born in Karkor. She was born illegitimate on a birth certificate, but she was the eldest daughter of William Augustus and Sarah Nicholas. Sarah died in 1894 at the age of 53 years, and William Augustus Nicholas, he died May, I think 1921, at the age of 77 years. Okay, this is a photograph of the family. It's about 1888, and we've got Edward John Marden, who was the stepson of William Augustus. He was the first son of Sarah Nicholas, who's here. That's William Augustus Nicholas. That's Frederick A. Nicholas. William Sidney Marden Nicholas, who's another stepson, a son of Sarah by her first marriage. And on the left we've got George Henry Nicholas, and the Nicholas names keep on repeating through the family. So this George Henry Nicholas is not William Augustus's brother, who was also called George Henry Nicholas. So this is George Henry Nicholas Jr. here. That's Clara Blanche Nicholas. That's Herbert Percival Nicholas, youngest son of Sarah. And this is Sarah Marden Nicholas. She married a guy called John Marden in the 1860s. They split up, and she formed a relationship with William Augustus. They didn't marry till 1878, and I think I think John Marden died in about 1877. So when they were able to get married, they got married. But otherwise, they got on with their lives, basically. William Augustus began life a lot earlier. In 1867, he was in various New South Wales gold rushes. He was a trader carrying on a mixed business. He did photography, and he was based at Grenfell in New Creek. And this is an 1868 photograph of Grenfell in the time that William Augustus Nicholas was there. Whether it's by William Augustus Nicholas or not, we were not able to determine. It's sort of the right period, but and you can see the township sort of emerging there behind. All didn't go well for William in the gold rush, and when you've got in the insolvency of William Augustus Nicholas of Dubbo in the colony petition and schedule, this is not a good thing. He went into voluntary insolvent. He declared himself insolvent. He was owed about £120 worth of debt from various guys that he sold cigarettes to, tobacco, taken photographs. They didn't find gold, they couldn't pay him, and William Augustus Nicholas was forced into insolvency. He did not emerge from an insolvency for another 16 years. So for 16 years he had a heavy burden to carry, to lift. One of the beauties of becoming insolvent is you leave a trail, and I've hand typed this, but it's the description of property of William Augustus Nicholas in 1867. So we know he's a photographer because he's got a stereo camera, stands complete, a portrait camera worth £26 and 10 shillings, and these are the rest of his worldly possessions, if you like, when he became bankrupt. He had a coach for £25, a whip, 2 horses, 3 sets of harnesses, plus some wearing apparel. So That's a snapshot of William Augustus Nicholas back in 1867. They came to Bundanoon as Mr. and Mrs. Nicholas, artist and portraitist, Fernshades, Bundanoon. This is the backs of one of their photographs. So he and Sarah became travelling photographers in Bundanoon. This is a postcard. It was done by Clara Nicholas. She was then the manager. This is their house, Fernmount, which was down the end of Anzac Parade down there. A couple of favourite photographs of William Augustus Nicholas, which we'll come to in this presentation. This is a beautiful shot of Sarah Nicholas taken in their studio in Bundanoon. And it's courtesy of Dawn and Ross Robinson, who came to Bundanoon following their Nicholas history a couple of years ago. So that's a terrific photo of Sarah. That's William Augustus, once again from the Dawn Robinson collection. Later in life, maybe 1910 or thereabouts. Another shot of William Augustus. Now this is an unusual picture. We've got Sarah, we've got Clara, and up here we've got the projected image of Amy Eliza, their late daughter. So you can take it various ways emotionally, but I find it's a very moving photograph. And he would have had the technology to do that via a magic lantern slide or whatever to project it up there, that little image of Amy Eliza. Okay, we're now 1873. William Augustus Nicholas and Sarah came to Bundanoon in about 1872. Their kids, according to the school records, their kids came to the school, and this is the first, it's not a photograph, this is a woodcut based on a photograph of William Augustus Nicholas, and was in the Illustrated Australian News in 1873. Okay, and that's the Fitzroy Iron Steelworks as it was then. This is another photo from the Illustrated Australian News, 1873, and this is 10-foot falls at Mittagong. I went to try and find it. It's below the swimming pool on the Natai River. So that's an interesting image. If we go to the next image, and Maureen and I went to the State Library following a lead, as we want to do, and in the Bernard Holterman album, and those days you went to the State Library and they actually bought out, or you were tucked away into a special office, and out came this album from Bernard Holterman photographs. He came from Hill End, was a well-known patron of photographers. He also discovered, what did he do? He discovered the biggest gold nugget in Australia, which I think was 1.2 metres high or thereabouts. If you're going to discover a nugget, discover one that big. So that was Holterman. If you go back, you can see the details of the waterfall, the details of the tree. Let's go forward. Same waterfall details, same tree. So the woodcut guy has used this photograph to base that on. So it's nice to match them up, 50 years later. This is William Augustus's 40 acres. It was originally 40 acres, but it was trimmed down to 34 acres because of the railway, the gatehouse, and the Church of England land was cut off from Nicholas's land. He got the rest of that 40 acres from Charles Jordan. This is a view of Nicholas's land that we were seeing. The first house that they lived in may have been here. Whether that was Fernshades or not, I don't know. It could have been early Fernshades. This slide was taken at the same time and place as the other one, and there's the gatehouse at Bundanoon and the Jordan's Crossing railway line. There's Jordan's Crossing here, for which the town then had its name. This is another shot. This is Jordan's Crossing. A little bit later, the station had grown a little bit since the earlier shot. This is a well-known shot. Opening of the Church of England down the road here in 1879. Picture taken either by William Augustus or Sarah Nicholas. I'm not sure which of them took it, and that was opening day of the church. Nicholas's lands surrounded the church lands, but he, that land was excised from his land earlier in the 1870s. We're now up to 1882. Town and Country Journal had an article on views in Mossvale and vicinity by a guy called The Raven, and he picked up a couple of photographs. There's a possibility that all of these woodcuts are based on photographs taken by William Augustus Nicholas. This is the Erith coal mine down here, the river, which has probably looked a bit like this in the last couple of months, and a guy climbing up the ladder here. And if we go to the next slide, and this is a well-known slide, this is a William Augustus Nicholas photograph. We've got the guy climbing up the ladder, there's your coal mine. The details of the waterfall are identical, although in this one we've got a little kid up the top here. This is a well-known William Augustus Nicholas photograph. We can date it from there, 1882, but they probably used this photograph for about 20 years, so you can never be quite sure. 2014 it rained, I couldn't resist going down there and trying to get the same shot. That's as close as I could get. It must have been a warm time of the year with these kids here. Okay, this is, it's William Augustus Nicholas. This is 40 acres. This is his first plan of subdivision, and he came out of insolvency in 1884. He paid off all his creditors. He had to square off with each of them and get a letter from them to say that he'd squared off, and he came out of insolvency. How he managed to do a deal with Jordan and get the land whilst being insolvent, I don't know. It was obviously a clever move, but he squared off with all his creditors. He squared off with, and the first thing he did was to sell the hotel site, and you can see fern shades there, to Sarah Nicholas. So she owned the hotel site and the building in her own right. William Augustus Nicholas did not own it, she owned it, and in the title deeds she has the power to make the decisions in relationship to that block of land. It clearly establishes her ownership and control of that block of land. This is taken from Fern Mount looking down. It's a W.A. Nicholas stereo view, or half a stereo view, and there's the hotel there. Sarah was the first. William Augustus in get my dates right, about 1884 applied to be the licensee. He was knocked back. It might have had something to do with being bankrupt. And they leased it to a guy, I think his name was Weinman or something like that, for about a year, and then Sarah got the licence, and she held that licence for the rest of her life as the licensee of the hotel. Okay, next one. I'll cover a lot of ground quickly. Sarah died in, 1893, 1894. She owned the hotel. 1890s was the Great Depression. It was a 10-year depression. It was greater than we've ever known. It was greater than the 1930s depression. And the hotel had a valuation of £800, but there were debts of £795 on it, and there was another £105 owed to a liquor company. So Sarah died. Her estate within months was in deep trouble, and I think it was the ES&A Bank took over the estate, and the family lost control of the hotel in the 1890s as a result of the Depression. And it then became, about 1901, it became the ES&A Bank, sold it, acting under power of the mortgagee, sold it to the Tyler family. It then became Tyler's Hotel. Up there is Grice's Hill, which is Fernfield, as I would know it, or modern-day Killarney. And the cross is the lady, it's a postcard, the lady staying there put a cross on and said, "This is where I was staying." So that's why the cross is there. Well, that's another one of Tyler's Hotel. So this would be 1905-ish. We've gone on the other side of the railway line to Grice's Hill looking down, and across up here we can see what's these days called the Pill Factory was then called the Golden Cross Factory, built in, get it right, construction began in 1896 and the building was completed in 1898. This photograph is about 1905. We don't have many photographs of the Pill Factory. This is from Dorothy Shannon's book. So you've got Fernmount over here, which is their establishment, and this is the factory with the Golden Cross. And if you've really got good eyesight, you can see that you can just make out laboratory here. And I think the other night I was able to read powders there, so that's an early shot of the factory, which I think when they lost the pub, things were desperate for William Augustus Nicholas, and they were staring probably insolvency in the face. Fortunately, with the hotel, the mortgage, Sarah owned it, and she also owned the mortgage to the ES&A Bank. William Augustus wasn't the guarantor, so that they lost control of it, but at least it meant the rest of his land holdings were still intact. And I think part of his recovery as a business was to build up the homeopathic medicine side of the business. This was to help pay the bills, which is why he built the Pill Factory. Another shot of the Pill Factory, it's over here. I think that's Hillside, a boarding house of the period. A couple of these houses, I'm not sure they survive or not. And there's the Pill Factory sitting up there. This would be a 1930s shot looking down at Anzac Parade, and there's the Pill Factory down here. William Augustus passed away in 1921. Sarah Nicholas II, his second wife, Sarah Nicholas, who married in 1896, she took over the pharmaceutical business and ran that probably to about 1930, I think, from memory, and it was then sold as a boarding house and became a Bundernoon House. And Sarah lived in what we call the wedding cake house, which is over here on this picture. So this is the Bundernoon House. We can just make it out there. The wedding cake house had gone by this phase, and this picture was probably taken, I'm not sure, it's either pre or post World War II. Going by the car, we can say pre or post World War II. Okay, this is Nicholas' Helping Hand Book to Health. This is one of his books to health that he wrote. Very few examples of it exist. I tracked this one down at the Monash University Library, I think, and they were kind enough to scan a couple of pages for me because the book was so delicate it was falling apart. So it's a Helping Hand Guide to Book, Helping Hand Book to Health, W.A. Nicholas, Fernmount, Bundernoon. This is the middle pages of the book. It gives us a date, 25th of April 1896, so it's prior to the completion of the Pill Factory. And can we zero in on the first letter up there? Is that possible? If we can zoom in on that. That's it, okay. So the first letter contains how to treat abscess, acne, acute alcoholism, that would be handy, apoplexy, asthma, back, baldness, bibliogness, I'm not sure what that is, black eye, that's obviously very bad, bladder, bone, brain, bruises, burns and skulls. I mean, after you've read the first letter, you'd hardly have to read the second letter. This is actually the printing plate of one of the pages of that book we've just been looking at. So it's a very important part of it. And I mean, once again, it gives you, in scurvy, the first thing is to correct the diet, eat plenty of vegetables and potatoes. That's the immediate cure for scurvy. This is the back page of the book. Nicholas Golden Cross emollients, ointments and powders, cure just about everything known to man, I think. And there's a very interesting picture of William Augustus there, which we'll pick up in the next slide. And I reckon that's the identical picture to the last one, which they've used in that. So that's William Augustus Nicholas, 1896. And this is the back of one of their stereo views, just advertising what they did. The Helping Hand, books to health, ointments and powders, wholesale and retail, from the Golden Cross manufacturing company of Bundanoon. This is the wedding cake house. William Augustus here, pretty late in life. He died at 77, so maybe this would have been, the last couple of years of his life at the wedding cake house. And these are various family descendants of his. This is another view of the wedding cake house, pill factory beside it, and that's Sarah Nicholas II. And there you can see she's got a little sign there selling her pills and potions. She kept that business going, way of earning a living. She tried to float it in the company about 1930, but I don't think that, or the late 20s, that didn't come to fruition. And I think she sold the business, it must have been about sold the building about 1930. I think she passed away in 1945 in Sydney. Half a dozen quick slides. These are my favourite slides of William Augustus Nicholas. So this is bringing a load of timber up from the gullies at the Mark Morton Lookout, as we call it today. So that's one of my favourites. This is the Four Tooth Brothers. These guys are going, this is what we saw going up, and this is their beautifully constructed railway line here. I'm not sure whether it would pass modern day occupational health and safety standards. And their whole life depends on that line, that little thin cable going through the back there. And that's courtesy Graham Tooth and the Alma Tooth collection. And Alma was able to identify those four guys. One of my favourites, called Swing Falls, for obvious reasons, this guy on the swing. I think that's George Henry Nicholas, William Augustus's younger brother, taken somewhere along in one of the rivers here. If we could zoom in on that one, up to the lady sitting on the packing case there. This is the top floor of Ferry Bower, and I reckon that's Sarah Nicholas I in the 1880s, taken at top floor of the Ferry Bower. It's one of my favourite shots. It's William Augustus Nicholas, a couple of ladies beside the rivers, reflection. Maureen bought that on eBay from Wagga Wagga or somewhere for the sum of $24, I think. And she only bid 25, and she got it for 24. We could have missed out. And so that's it's a really nice photograph. The detail of it is really good. The lady's fabric doesn't show up that well on this screen, but on a photograph it does show up nicely. This is Ringwood Pass, which is a couple of people. This lady here with a pith helmet, side saddle pony, a guy behind her, going up or down Ringwood Pass. Here's the last one, which is our well-known favourite shot, which is these guys at Mark Morton Lookout. That railway line we're looking at actually ran down there, and these guys didn't worry too much about safety rails at that point in time. So that's it. Thank you.